She was just a young virgin cleaning lady who worked to survive. But a millionaire wanted her as a woman, even before he knew her real name. If this story got you hooked, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Keeping on. The penthouse of Ethan Morgan occupied the top floor of a mirrored glass building on Park Avenue in New York City. It was a place where luxury whispered in every detail. Italian marble flooring, German furniture with clean lines, paintings that cost more than Olivia would earn in 10 lifetimes. But for her, this place was just another environment to be cleaned, another surface to be polished until it shined like a mirror. Olivia woke up at 5 in the morning every day, drank watery coffee from the cracked cup she had inherited from her father, and walked 3 miles to the subway. The journey from the outskirts of Queens to the Upper East Side took 2 hours. 2 hours in which she mentally prepared herself to enter a world that wasn't hers, where each object was worth more than her entire house. In the first few months, Ethan was just a shadow that passed by. He left early, returned late, and Olivia performed her routine in absolute silence. She vacuumed the Persian rugs, cleaned the panoramic windows that revealed all of New York City below, organized business books that were never read, only displayed as trophies of an intelligence measured in figures and achievements. Ethan's life was a labyrinth of meetings, contracts, and decisions that moved millions. At 42, he had built a shipping empire that stretched from New York to Miami. Businessmen feared his coldness in negotiations. Politicians sought his approval. Women desired his attention, even knowing that he consumed and discarded them like cigarettes after pleasure. But Ethan lived in a solitude that no money could buy. He had learned early that feelings were dangerous luxuries. At 15, he had witnessed the death of his younger sister in an accident he could have prevented. Since then, he had built walls around his heart, walls so high that even he could no longer scale them. He controlled everything and everyone around him, because control was the only way to never again feel the pain of loss. It was on a rainy Tuesday in March when everything changed. Olivia was kneeling in the master bathroom, scrubbing hard at a stubborn stain on the marble when she heard footsteps in the hallway. It was only 2 in the afternoon. Ethan never arrived before 7. She felt her heart race, not from fear, but from a strange anxiety she couldn't name. He entered the bedroom with his phone to his ear, discussing numbers, deadlines, threatening consequences for those who didn't keep their promises. Olivia tried to make herself invisible, but when Ethan finished the call and walked to the window, his eyes found her through the reflection in the glass. For a moment that seemed eternal, they looked at each other through that improvised mirror. Ethan saw a girl on her knees, black hair tied in a messy bun, hands red from scrubbing, simple dress that didn't hide the delicacy of her movements. There was something about her that deeply disturbed him. It wasn't beauty in the conventional sense. It was something more dangerous, authenticity. In a world where everything was calculated, she seemed genuine. Olivia felt the weight of that gaze like a mark on her skin. No one had ever looked at her like that, as if they wanted to decipher her secrets. She murmured an almost inaudible, "Excuse me," and tried to leave the room, but Ethan spoke for the first time. "What is your name?" His voice was deep, controlled, but there was something in it that made Olivia tremble. "Olivia, sir." She couldn't raise her eyes from the floor. "Olivia." He repeated the name as if testing its flavor. "How long have you been working here?" 6 months, sir." Ethan nodded slowly. "Continue your work." But he didn't leave the room. He stayed there, observing her every movement, like a predator studying its prey. Olivia finished cleaning with trembling hands, feeling that something had irreversibly changed between them. That night, Ethan couldn't concentrate on anything. During the meeting with Japanese investors, his mind kept returning to that girl kneeling on the floor. During dinner with influential politicians, he remembered how she had blushed when he said her name. It had been decades since anything had distracted him from his focus. Now, a 19-year-old cleaning lady had managed to break his concentration with a simple look. Olivia didn't sleep either. Lying on the thin mattress in her house in Queens, she still felt the weight of those grey eyes on her skin. There was something about that man that both frightened and attracted her at the same time. It was like standing on the edge of a precipice, knowing that one false step would be fatal, but unable to move away from the edge. The next morning, Ethan cancelled his first meeting of the day. He arrived at the apartment at 8, a time when Olivia was usually alone. She was in the kitchen, preparing coffee when she heard him enter. Her heart raced. He approached slowly, like someone trying not to frighten a wild animal. "Make coffee for 2, he said, his voice softer than the day before. Olivia looked him directly in the eyes for the first time. They were grey like rain, but there was hidden fire in those irises. I don't know if I can, sir." "You can," said Ethan, and in that single word was an order that allowed no argument. While she prepared the coffee with trembling hands, Ethan observed her. Each of her gestures was economical, precise, born of necessity. There was no waste. In her movements, no vanity. She was the complete opposite of the women he was accustomed to. When Olivia served the coffee, their hands touched by accident. The contact lasted only a second, but it was like an electric shock that ran through both their bodies. She almost dropped the cup. He felt something move in his chest, something he had thought dead for a long time. "Sit down," said Ethan. I need to work, sir. The work can wait. Sit down." Olivia obeyed, but stayed on the edge of the chair, ready to flee at any moment. Ethan drank his coffee in silence, studying her face. There was an old sadness in those dark eyes, a maturity that didn't match her age. She had suffered, that was obvious, and for some reason he couldn't explain. This made him furious. "Tell me about yourself," he said finally. "There's not much to tell, sir." "Ethan, call me Ethan." Olivia shook her head. She knew this crossed a line that shouldn't be crossed, but when she looked into his eyes again, she saw something that made her whisper, "Ethan." The name left her lips like a caress, and Ethan felt something shatter inside him. At that moment, he knew he was lost, that this girl would be his ruin or his salvation, but that there was no turning back. In the weeks that followed, Ethan began to alter his routine. He arrived earlier, left later, always finding excuses to be in the apartment while Olivia worked. He observed her in silence, memorizing every detail. How she bit her lower lip when concentrating, how she sighed when she thought no one was looking, how her eyes filled with tears when cleaning objects too expensive for her world. Olivia felt the constant weight of that gaze. It was like living under a microscope, each movement being analyzed, catalogued, judged. She tried to focus on her work, but her skin tingled whenever Ethan entered the same space. There was a tension in the air that made her breathe with difficulty, as if the oxygen were rarefied. One morning, while organizing papers in his office, Olivia found a folder deliberately left open. Inside was information about her: her address, family history, her father's death, her mother's abandonment, her debts, everything meticulously investigated. She felt the blood freeze in her veins. Ethan knew exactly how vulnerable she was, how desperate, how without options. "Find the reading interesting?" His voice appeared behind her, making her start. Ethan was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, a cold smile on his lips. I wasn't," Olivia stammered, hands trembling as she tried to close the folder. "Don't lie to me, Olivia, never lie to me." He approached slowly, like a feline cornering its prey. "You saw everything, didn't you? You know that I know everything about you." Olivia retreated until she bumped into the bookshelf. "Why did you do this?" "Because I need to know who I'm dealing with." Ethan stopped just inches from her, so close that she could feel the heat of his body, the smell of his expensive cologne mixed with something more primitive, more dangerous. "You're an orphan, without family, without anyone in the world. You owe $12,000 to loan sharks. You live in a house that's falling apart. You work 12 hours a day and still barely manage to pay the bills." Each word was like a slap. Olivia closed her eyes, trying to hold back tears. "What do you want from me?" "I still don't know." Ethan raised his hand and touched her face with his fingertips, a touch so light that she almost thought she had imagined it. "But I'm going to find out." That night, Olivia cried until she had no more tears. She felt naked, exposed, as if Ethan had stripped off her skin and left only raw flesh. She thought about running away, disappearing into the New York crowd, but she knew he would find her. Men like Ethan always found what they were looking for. The next day, he wasn't in the apartment, nor the day after. Olivia worked in silence, trying to convince herself that perhaps he had lost interest, that perhaps she could become invisible again. But on Friday, she found a box on the bed in the master bedroom. Inside was a black dress, simple but clearly expensive, exactly her size. "Put it on," Ethan's voice came from the hallway. He had returned without her noticing. "I can't accept this. It's not a gift, it's a uniform." He entered the room, his eyes cold as ice. "From today on, you no longer work for the agency. You work for me, directly." Olivia felt the floor disappear beneath her feet. "What does that mean?" "It means I'm going to double your salary. It means you'll only take care of this apartment, my personal schedule, my private commitments." Ethan came closer, his words taking on a lower, more intimate tone. "It means you're mine now." The word mine echoed in her chest like a funeral bell. Olivia knew she should protest, scream, run. But there was something in his voice, in the way he looked at her, that left her paralyzed. It was like being hypnotized by a snake. "And if I refuse?" Ethan smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile. "You won't refuse because you need the money, because you have nowhere to go, and because deep down you want to stay." The last phrase was like a punch to the stomach. Olivia wanted to deny it, but the words died in her throat. There was a terrible truth there that she couldn't face. In the days that followed, the routine changed completely. Olivia arrived earlier, left later. Ethan introduced her as his personal assistant to visitors and employees. She organized his schedule, answered phone calls, served coffee during important meetings. The powerful men who frequented the apartment looked at her with a mixture of contempt and desire that made her feel dirty. But it was Diana Reynolds who brought the first real danger. The criminal defense attorney arrived on a Thursday afternoon, wearing a suit that cost more than Olivia earned in 6 months. She was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way, with perfectly styled blonde hair and blue eyes that cut like blades. "So this is the new assistant." Diana pronounced the word with evident contempt, her eyes running over Olivia from head to toe, as if evaluating cattle at the slaughterhouse. Ethan was on the phone, but Olivia saw his muscles tense. "Diana, what a surprise." "We need to talk. In private." Diana cast another venomous look at Olivia. "About your new habits." Olivia retreated to the kitchen, but she could hear fragments of the conversation through the partially open door. Diana talked about reputation, about scandals, about how Ethan was playing with fire. He responded in a controlled voice, but there was a veiled threat in every word. "You've always been careful, Ethan. Don't start being careless now." Diana's voice was like ice. Girls like that disappear easily. The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia felt the blood freeze in her veins. When Diana left, slamming the door hard enough to make the paintings tremble, Ethan remained standing in the living room for long minutes. Finally, he called, "Olivia." She entered the living room with shaky legs. Ethan was standing in front of the window, looking at New York below, as if it were his personal kingdom. "What did you hear?" Olivia hesitated. Lying would be dangerous, but the truth could be fatal. "Everything." Ethan turned slowly. His eyes were different, darker, more intense. "And what do you think about that?" "I think maybe she's right." The words came out before Olivia could stop them. "I think I shouldn't be here." Ethan crossed the room in 3 strides and pressed her against the wall. His hands rested on either side of her head, creating a prison of flesh and bone. Olivia could feel the heat of his body, the intensity of his breathing. "Let me make one thing clear." His voice was low, dangerous. "You're here because I want you to be. You stay because I allow you to stay. And if anyone tries to take you from me..." He paused, his eyes shining with a dark promise. "They'll discover what I'm capable of." Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine. She didn't know if it was fear or excitement, maybe both. "Why?" she whispered. "Why me?" Ethan studied her for a long moment, as if searching for the answer in her face. When he spoke, his voice was strangely vulnerable. "Because you're the first person in 20 years who makes me feel something besides emptiness." And then, without warning, he kissed her. It wasn't a gentle kiss. It was possessive, desperate, charged with a hunger that consumed him from within. Olivia should have resisted, should have pushed him away. Instead, she felt herself melting in his arms, her body betraying her mind. When he pulled away, they were both breathing heavily. Ethan looked at her as if he had seen a ghost. "Now you're truly mine," he murmured against her lips. And Olivia knew with a certainty that terrified her that he was right. After the kiss, everything changed. Ethan became even more intense, more vigilant, as if he had marked territory and now needed to defend it. Olivia felt constantly observed, even when he wasn't physically present. There were discreet cameras throughout the rooms that she pretended not to notice, but which made her feel like a bird in a gilded cage. The apartment transformed into a kind of stage where they both played roles they didn't quite know how to interpret. During the day, she was the efficient assistant, he the ruthless businessman, but there was an electric current in the air whenever they crossed paths, a tension that made each interaction loaded with hidden meanings. Olivia began to receive new clothes regularly. Discreet, but elegant dresses, Italian leather shoes, expensive lingerie that made her blush just thinking about who had chosen it. When she protested, Ethan simply said it was part of the job, that she represented his image now. But there was something in the way his eyes traveled over her body when she wore the pieces that revealed motivations far less professional. The nights became the most dangerous time. Ethan worked late in his office, but always found excuses to call her. He needed coffee, documents organized, silent company while he read contracts. Olivia answered each call with her heart racing, knowing she was walking a tightrope over a precipice. It was on one of these nights that he touched her, for the second time. Olivia was organizing papers when she felt his hands on her shoulders, gently massaging the accumulated tension. She should have moved away, but the touch was so careful, so different from the brutality she expected, that she allowed herself to relax for a moment. "You carry the world on your shoulders," murmured Ethan, his fingers finding points of tension she didn't even know existed. "Since when?" "Since always," Olivia responded without thinking, then regretted the honesty. "No more." His hands stopped moving but remained on her shoulders. "Now I carry it for you." The promise sounded more like a threat. Olivia knew that men like Ethan did nothing for free. Everything had a price, especially protection. "What do you want in return?" "You know what I want." Olivia closed her eyes. Yes, she knew. She saw it in the way he looked at her, in the way his breathing changed when she bent over to pick something up, in the way his fists clenched when other men noticed her. During meetings, Ethan wanted her completely, without reservations, without conditions. "I'm not like the others," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know." Ethan made her turn to face him. "That's exactly why you're here." In the days that followed, Ethan intensified his psychological games. He began taking her to business dinners, introducing her as his personal assistant, but keeping a possessive hand on her back, making sure everyone knew she belonged to him. Olivia felt like a trophy being displayed, but there was a disturbing part of herself that liked the attention, the power she felt when other men desired her, but knew she was untouchable. On one such occasion, during a dinner with Portuguese investors at a restaurant in Manhattan, Olivia met Mark Andrews, a real estate entrepreneur who didn't disguise his interest in her. He was handsome, young, with an easy smile that contrasted with Ethan's dark intensity. "How lucky you are, Morgan," said Mark, raising his wineglass towards Olivia. "Assistants like this are rare." Ethan smiled, but Olivia saw his muscles imperceptibly tense. "Olivia is indeed unique, very dedicated." The word sounded like a mark of ownership. Olivia felt the blood rush to her face but maintained her professional composure. Throughout dinner, Mark tried to make conversation with her, asking questions about her life, her dreams, always with an interest that went beyond professional. On the way back, Ethan drove in sepulchral silence. Olivia could feel the anger emanating from him like heat from a furnace. When they arrived at the apartment, he grabbed her arm before she could get out of the car. "Did you enjoy the attention?" His voice was dangerously low. "I didn't do anything." "No." Ethan leaned closer, his grey eyes gleaming in the dim light of the parking garage. "I saw how you smiled at him, how you blushed at his compliments. I was being polite. It's my job. Your job is to be mine. Only mine." His hand moved up to her neck, not squeezing, but making it clear he could. "I never want to see you looking at another man like that again." Olivia should have felt fear. Instead, she felt something more disturbing: excitement. There was something in his possessiveness that awakened a part of herself she didn't know existed. "And if I do look?" The question came out before she could stop it. Ethan smiled, but it was a predator's smile. "Then you'll discover what I'm capable of when someone tries to take what's mine." That night, Olivia couldn't sleep. She returned to her house in Queens, but Ethan was in her thoughts, his words echoing in her mind. There was a part of her that wanted to test him, to see how far he would go to keep her. Another part was terrified by her own reactions, by the fact that she was beginning to like his obsessive attention. The next morning, she found an envelope under her door. Inside was enough money to pay off all her debts and a note with just one line. "So you no longer have excuses to run from me." Olivia sat on the floor of her kitchen and cried. She cried for the girl she had been, who dreamed of a gentle, protective love. She cried for the woman she was becoming, who longed for a man who possessed her as if she were an object. And she cried because she knew that even now, having the financial freedom to leave, she couldn't leave him. When she arrived at the apartment, Ethan was waiting. There was something different in his eyes, an intensity that made her tremble. "Thank you," she said, showing the envelope. "Don't thank me yet." Ethan approached slowly. "Now you owe me something much greater than money." "What?" "Your honesty." He stopped in front of her so close that she could see the golden flecks in his grey irises. "Tell me you feel nothing for me. Tell me this is all just work for you. Convince me that I can let you go." Olivia opened her mouth to lie, to say the words that would free her. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something that shocked her: vulnerability. Ethan, the man who controlled empires and destroyed lives with a signature, was afraid of her answer. She swallowed hard. "I can't." "Can't what?" "I can't pretend I feel nothing." The words came out in a desperate whisper. "I can't lie to you, I can't lie to myself." Ethan closed his eyes as if in pain. When he opened them again, there was a fierce determination in them. "Then there's no turning back," he said, "for either of us." And Olivia knew she had just sealed her fate. There was no more choice, no more escape. She belonged to him now, completely and irrevocably. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt a strange peace, as if she had finally stopped fighting against a current that had always been stronger than her. Ethan kissed her again, and this time she surrendered completely. When he took her to the bedroom, Olivia knew she was crossing a line from which she could never return. But for the first time in her life, she didn't want to return. She wanted to lose herself in this dangerous man, even knowing it could destroy her. The first night she spent in Ethan's arms changed Olivia forever. He possessed her with an intensity that bordered on violence, but there was a reverence in his touches that confused her. It was as if she were simultaneously his prey and his goddess, something to be dominated and venerated at the same time. When dawn broke, Olivia woke alone in the king-size bed, her body aching and her soul transformed. Ethan was in the office, already dressed and on the phone, as if nothing had happened. But when their eyes met, Olivia saw a primitive satisfaction in them, as if he had finally conquered something he had desired for a long time. She tried to maintain normalcy, to put on her clothes and return to the role of assistant. But everything had changed. Each look from him burned her skin. Each casual word carried double meaning. During the weeks that followed, a perverse routine was established. During the day, Olivia maintained her professional posture, organizing Ethan's schedule answering calls, serving coffee to visitors. But at night, when the last commitment ended, she became another person. Ethan transformed her into a creature of desire and submission that she didn't recognize, but who, paradoxically, seemed more real than the restrained woman she pretended to be during the day. Ethan was a complex lover. He could be brutally possessive one moment and surprisingly tender the next. He marked her body with violent kisses, but then caressed each mark as if asking for forgiveness. There were nights when he took her with a fury that left her breathless, and others when he touched her with a delicacy that made her cry with emotion. Olivia began to realize that Ethan fought against demons she could barely imagine. Sometimes she woke in the middle of the night and found him standing at the window, looking at the sleeping city with an expression of pain so intense it seemed physical. When she tried to approach him at these moments, he closed up like an oyster, returning to being the cold, calculating businessman. It was on one of these dawns that Olivia decided to investigate. Ethan had left early for a meeting in Long Island, and she took advantage to explore the apartment more deeply. In the office, she discovered a safe slightly ajar that she had never noticed before. Inside, besides important documents, was a yellowed photo, Ethan at 15, hugging a small girl with curly hair and a luminous smile. Curious as always, his voice made her start. Ethan was at the door, having returned earlier than expected. But he didn't seem angry. He seemed tired. "I'm sorry, Olivia tried to close the safe, but he motioned for her to stop. It was my sister. Ethan entered the office and took the photo with hands that trembled almost imperceptibly. Sophia. She was 8 when she died. Olivia felt her heart constrict. What happened? Ethan remained silent for so long that she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse with contained emotion. She wanted to go to the water park with her friends. I was supposed to take her, but I had a date with a girl. I thought I could do it later. He laughed, but it was a sound without humor. She went with a friend's parents. The bus crashed on the way back. Sophia was the only one who died. Olivia felt tears burn her eyes. You were just a child. It wasn't your fault. Yes, it was. Ethan put the photo away with reverent care. If I had taken her, if I hadn't been so selfish, she would be alive. That's why I learned that I can't let anything important slip away. I can't be careless with what matters. The words hit Olivia like lightning. She finally understood his obsession, his need to control everything around him. Ethan wasn't just being possessive with her. He was terrified of losing her as he had lost his sister. Ethan, she approached slowly as if dealing with a wounded animal. I won't disappear. You can't promise that. He looked at her with a vulnerability that broke her heart. No one can. Olivia made a decision she knew would change everything. She took his face in her hands and kissed him with all the tenderness she could gather. Then I'll stay as long as you want me. Ethan's response was to bury his face in her neck and hold her with a strength that almost hurt. Forever, he murmured against her skin. I want you forever. At that moment, Olivia understood that she had fallen in love with him, not with the powerful and dangerous man, but with the wounded boy he still carried inside. It was a dangerous, destructive love, but it was real, and that terrified her more than any physical threat. After that conversation, Ethan became even more intense. He began to talk about changes, about how he wanted Olivia more present in his official life. He talked about buying a house for her, about introducing her as his companion in the most exclusive social circles. Olivia knew this would be her definitive social condemnation, but the idea excited her more than it should have. It was then that Diana Reynolds reappeared. This time she didn't come to the apartment. She appeared at the door of Olivia's house in Queens on a Saturday morning, dressed casually, but still exuding power and danger. We need to talk, said Diana, entering without being invited. Away from his ears. Olivia served watery coffee, in chipped cups, embarrassed by the stark difference between her life and that of her visitor. Diana observed everything with calculating eyes, cataloguing every detail of the poverty around her. Do you really believe he loves you? Diana asked. Without preamble, That's none of your business. Yes, it is when it affects his business. And mine. Diana leaned forward. Ethan has been my client for 10 years. I know exactly what he's capable of when he wants something. Then you know he won't give up on me. No, but you can give up on him. Diana opened her purse and took out a thick envelope. $100,000, enough for you to start a new life far from here. All you need to do is disappear. Olivia looked at the money without touching it. Why are you doing this? Because I know Ethan better than anyone. He destroys everything he touches. He destroyed his own family, destroyed rivals, destroyed even himself. Diana stood up. You're young, you have your whole life ahead of you. Don't let him ruin you too. After Diana left, Olivia sat staring at the envelope for hours. $100,000. It was more money than she had seen in her entire life. She could go to another state, start over, be free. But when she tried to imagine a life without Ethan, she felt a void in her chest that made her double over in pain. That night, when Ethan arrived at the apartment, he found Olivia waiting in the living room. She had returned, as she always returned. He embraced her with the relief of someone who had just escaped death. Diana came to see me today, said Olivia against his chest. Ethan stiffened. What did she want? She offered me money to go away. And? The question came out tense, loaded with poorly disguised fear. Olivia pulled back to look him in the eyes. I burned the envelope in the kitchen sink. The relief on Ethan's face was so intense that she almost laughed. But then his expression changed, becoming predatory. Diana will pay for that, he said, his voice icy. Ethan, no. No one tries to take you from me. He pulled her closer, his eyes shining with a dangerous light. No one. Olivia knew she should be afraid. Diana had tried to save her, and now she would suffer the consequences. But there was a dark part of herself that felt protected, valued. Ethan was willing to destroy anyone who threatened their relationship. It was terrible and exciting at the same time. That night, he possessed her with a desperate hunger, as if he wanted to mark her forever. And Olivia surrendered completely, knowing she was losing herself more each day, but unable to stop. She was addicted to him, to his touch, to his obsession with her. He was her ruin and her salvation, and she could no longer distinguish one from the other. Ethan's revenge against Diana was surgical and devastating. In less than a week, she lost 3 important clients, had her office investigated by the IRS, and saw her reputation being shredded by gossip columnists. Olivia watched it all in silence, divided between horror at what Ethan was capable of doing and a primitive satisfaction at being so valued by him. Do you regret it? Asked Ethan one morning, as they read the news about Diana's professional fall on the tablet. Olivia looked at him over her coffee cup. She had changed a lot in recent weeks. Her hair was longer, well cut at one of the best salons in New York. Her clothes were expensive, elegant. On the outside, she looked like a society woman. Inside, she felt like an imposter. No, she finally answered, and the honesty of her response surprised her. She tried to separate us. The smile Ethan gave her was simultaneously proud and possessive. My girl is learning. The way he said my girl made something contract in her belly. Olivia knew she was being manipulated, molded, transformed into the woman Ethan wanted her to be. But there was a part of her that liked the transformation, that felt powerful being desired by such a dangerous man. Ethan began taking her to more exclusive social events, charity dinners, art auctions, restaurant openings where New York's elite gathered to be seen. Olivia learned to navigate these environments with an elegance she didn't know she possessed. But she always felt the curious looks, the malicious whispers. She's Morgan's new obsession, she heard fragments of conversations. Came from nowhere, must have something special in bed. The words hurt her, but Ethan seemed to enjoy the jealousy and envy of other men. It was at a charity gala at the Plaza Hotel that Olivia met Anthony Reynolds, Diana's father. The elderly man approached her during the cocktail hour, his blue eyes shining with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. So you're the reason for my daughter's disgrace, he said, without preamble. Olivia felt her blood freeze. Ethan was on the Other side of the ballroom, talking with politicians, but she knew he was watching her every move. "Mr. Reynolds, Don't try to deny it, I know exactly what you are." Anthony moved closer, his voice low and venomous. "A sophisticated prostitute. My daughter tried to save you, and look how she was rewarded." The words hit Olivia like slaps. She wanted to protest, to explain that it wasn't like that, but the words died in her throat, because there was a terrible truth in what he said. She sold herself for protection, luxury, for the illusion of love. "Ethan is dangerous," continued Anthony. "More than you imagine. His sister's death wasn't accidental. He orchestrated everything to inherit the family fortune earlier." Olivia shook her head, refusing to believe. "That's not true." "Investigate for yourself. Look at the beneficiaries of the life insurance. See who had access to the school documents." Anthony handed her a card. "When you discover the truth and want to escape, contact me. I can protect you from him." Before Olivia could respond, she felt a familiar hand on her waist. Ethan had silently approached, his face a mask of courtesy that fooled no one. "Anthony," he said, his voice dangerously soft, "I didn't know you were in New York." "Ethan." The older man showed no fear, but Olivia felt the tension between them like electricity in the air. "I was talking with your companion about family." "How interesting." Ethan pulled Olivia closer. "I hope you had an enlightening conversation." Anthony smiled coldly. "Very enlightening." He looked at Olivia one last time. "Think about what we discussed, dear, before it's too late." After he walked away, Ethan took Olivia to the hotel's terrace. The view of Central Park was breathtaking under the moonlight, but Olivia could barely appreciate it. "What did he say?" Ethan's voice was controlled, but Olivia knew the signs. There was a storm forming beneath the surface. "Lies," she replied automatically. "Just lies." Ethan studied her for a long moment. "Don't lie to me, Olivia, never lie to me." She took a deep breath. "He said that Sophia's death wasn't accidental." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan moved away from the railing, his fists slowly closing. When he finally spoke, his voice was unrecognizable. "And do you believe him?" Olivia looked him in the eyes. She saw anger there, but also fear. The fear of being discovered or the fear of being judged unfairly. "I don't know what to believe anymore." The response seemed to hurt Ethan more than any. Direct accusation. He approached her again, his hands holding her face with a gentleness that contrasted with the intensity of his eyes. "Do you want to know the truth about Sophia?" he asked. "The real truth?" Olivia nodded, even knowing she might prefer not to know. "I killed her," said Ethan, and the words fell between them like a blade. "Not directly, but my negligence caused her death. Anthony is right about that." Olivia felt her legs fail her. Ethan held her, preventing her from falling. "But it wasn't for money," he continued, his voice broken. "It was because I was a selfish teenager who thought only of myself. The life insurance, the beneficiaries, all that came later. My parents never recovered from the loss. My mother fell into deep depression. My father started drinking. They died in a car accident 3 years later, probably intentional." Olivia felt tears streaming down her face. "Ethan, so yes, I am a killer. Not with my own hands, but with my indifference. Is that what you want to hear?" He released her and stepped back. "That's what Anthony wants you to know. That you're in love with a man who destroys everything he touches." Olivia remained silent for a long moment, processing the confession. When she finally spoke, her voice was surprisingly firm. "You were a child. That doesn't absolve me." "No, but it explains." She approached him again. "It explains why you need to control everything, why you're so afraid of losing me." Ethan looked at her as if she were a ghost. "How can you forgive me so easily?" "Because I carry guilt too." Olivia touched his face, feeling the rough beard under her fingers. "Because I know what it's like to live with the weight of your own mistakes, and because I love you despite everything." The confession came out before she could stop it. Ethan looked at her with a mixture of shock and something that could be relief. "You love me?" "Unfortunately, yes." Olivia smiled through her tears. even knowing it could destroy me. Ethan kissed her then with a desperation she had never felt before. It was the kiss of a man who had just received forgiveness for sins he had carried for decades. When they separated, both were crying. "Anthony will try to separate us," said Ethan. "He and others like him. They'll use my past against us. Then we'll face them together. You don't understand what that means. From now on, you'll be a target. Anyone who wants to hurt me will try to go through you first." Olivia thought about Anthony Reynolds' card in her purse, about his offer of protection. She could accept it. She could flee from Ethan and that entire dangerous world. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw not only the powerful and relentless man, but also the haunted boy who still cried for his dead sister. "Then you'd better teach me how to defend myself," she said. Ethan smiled for the first time that night, a genuine smile that completely transformed his face. "My brave girl." "Our stubborn girl," corrected Olivia, and she knew she had made her definitive choice. There would be no going back. She was fully committed to this dangerous love, come what may. The return to New York brought a new reality for Olivia. Ethan wasn't exaggerating about her becoming a target. In the days following the gala at the plaza, subtle threats began to arrive. Wilted flowers left at the door of her old house in Queens, silent phone calls in the middle of the night, anonymous emails with photos of her entering and leaving Ethan's apartment. "You can't live alone anymore," declared Ethan one morning, after Olivia told him about the third threatening phone call. "You're moving in here permanently." Olivia knew this was inevitable, but the reality of the situation hit her like a punch. There would be no more retreats to her humble little house, no more moments of privacy to process everything that was happening. She would be totally integrated into Ethan's world, for better or worse. The move was quick and efficient. Ethan hired a company to pack her few personal belongings, transforming an entire life into half a dozen boxes. Olivia felt strangely stripped, seeing her memories being catalogued and packed by strangers in white gloves. "You can redo the apartment however you want," said Ethan, trying to soften the impact. "Change furniture, colors, decoration. I want you to feel at home." But Olivia knew it would never really be her home. It would always be his territory, where she would exist by permission. The realization didn't sadden her as much as it should have. There was a part of her that felt relieved at no longer having to make decisions alone, at having someone taking control of her life. Ethan intensified the security schemes. He hired a private driver for Olivia, a silent man named John who seemed more bodyguard than chauffeur. He installed more cameras, changed locks, established protocols for everything. Olivia felt simultaneously protected and imprisoned. It was during one of those first weeks living together that Olivia discovered another side of Ethan. One morning, she woke up and didn't find him in bed. She searched the apartment until she found him in the office, hunched over, documents, a half-empty bottle of whiskey beside him. "Didn't you sleep?" she asked, concerned. Ethan raised his eyes, red from exhaustion. "I can't sleep when you're here." The answer confused her. "Why?" "Because I watch you breathe. Afraid that you'll stop." He laughed bitterly. "Pathetic, isn't it? A man my age afraid of the dark." Olivia approached and knelt beside his chair. "It's not pathetic. It's human. I can't afford the luxury of being human. Human men lose everything they love." Olivia took the whiskey bottle and moved it away from him. "You won't lose me by drinking yourself to death." "How can you be so sure?" "Because you're stronger than that. Because you survived worse losses and kept fighting." She touched his face, forcing him to look at her. "And because I won't let you self-destruct." Ethan pulled her onto his lap, burying his face in her neck. "Sometimes I'm so afraid of you I can barely breathe." "Afraid of me?" "Afraid of what you represent. Afraid of how I feel when I'm with you." He pulled back to look at her. "You make me want to be better, and that terrifies me because I don't know if I'm capable." Olivia kissed him softly. "Then let's find out together." In the weeks that followed, they established a strange domestic routine. Ethan still worked obsessively, but he reserved time for romantic dinners in the apartment, for movies in the home theater, for conversations that extended deep into the night. Olivia discovered that he was intelligent in a way that went beyond business, cultured, funny when he let his guard down. But the external pressure continued to grow. Anthony Reynolds hadn't given up his crusade. He began spreading rumors about their relationship in New York's social circles. Olivia felt the looks change when she appeared in public, heard malicious whispers about the girl who bewitched Morgan. The situation reached its peak during a business dinner at Daniel. Ethan was negotiating an important contract with Japanese investors when a gossip columnist approached the table. "Mr. Morgan, is it true that your current companion was a prostitute before she met you?" The silence that followed was deadly. Olivia felt the blood drain from her face. The Japanese investors looked at each other uncomfortably. Ethan remained motionless for a moment that seemed eternal. Then, with a calmness that was more terrifying than any explosion of anger, Ethan stood up. "Olivia," he said, extending his hand to her. "Let's go." Olivia hesitated. Leaving would confirm the suspicions, give ammunition to his enemies. "Ethan, the contract. It doesn't matter." His voice was serene, but there was steel in it. "Nothing matters more than you." They left the restaurant hand in hand, under the flash of cameras and the buzz of the curious. In the car, Olivia finally broke down. "I ruined everything," she cried. "The contract, your reputation, everything. You ruined nothing." Ethan drove with a controlled fury that she could feel emanating from him. "They ruined it, and they'll pay for it." "How?" "Leave it to me." The next morning, Olivia woke up alone. Ethan had left early, leaving only a note saying he would return in the evening. During the day, she anxiously followed the news. There was no mention of the incident at the restaurant, which made her even more nervous. Ethan returned at 8 in the evening with an expression she had never seen. There was something predatory in his eyes, a dark satisfaction that made her shiver. "What did you do?" she asked. "What was necessary?" Ethan poured himself a shot of whiskey. "The journalist won't bother anyone anymore. He lost his job, had his bank accounts frozen for tax evasion, and discovered that his sources of information were all false." Olivia felt a chill. "And the investors?" "They returned to the negotiating table today. It seems they were impressed by my dedication to family." Ethan smiled coldly. "Businessmen respect loyalty, even when they don't approve of its manifestations." "Ethan, you can't keep destroying people because of me." "I can, and I will." He approached her, his eyes shining with a fierce intensity. "Anyone who tries to hurt you will discover what I'm capable of. This is not negotiable." Olivia should have been horrified. Instead, she felt a wave of something she recognized with shock, excitement. There was something primitive about being protected so fiercely, about being valued to the point that a man was willing to destroy enemies for her. "Does that make us monsters?" she asked. "Maybe." Ethan pulled her into his arms. "But we'll be monsters together." That night they made love with a desperate intensity, as if trying to fuse into one person. Olivia bit his lips until she tasted blood. He marked her skin with fingers that would leave bruises. It was violent and tender at the same time, a dance of possession and surrender. Afterward, lying in the dark, Ethan traced invisible patterns on Olivia's bare skin. "There's no going back," he murmured, "for either of us." "I know." Olivia nestled closer to him. "And I don't care. Even knowing this could destroy us. Especially knowing that." She kissed his chest right above his heart. "I'd rather be destroyed with you than save myself alone." Ethan held her tighter, as if he wanted to absorb her into himself. "My brave, crazy girl." "Our impossible love," Olivia whispered back. And they both knew they had crossed the final boundary. They were no longer two separate people who loved each other. They were a single entity, dangerous, capable of anything to protect what they had. The world could judge them, try to separate them, but they would face everything together, even if it meant condemning their own souls in the process. The following months brought a deceptive calm. Ethan and Olivia developed an intimacy that went beyond the physical, knowing each other's deepest secrets. She discovered that he woke up screaming some nights, tormented by nightmares about Sophia. He learned that she still wrote letters to her missing mother, letters she never sent, but that helped her process her feelings. Olivia began to become more involved in Ethan's business, not just as an assistant, but as a confidant and advisor. She discovered she had a talent for reading people, for perceiving lies and hidden intentions that went unnoticed by Ethan. He began taking her to important meetings, introducing her as his partner, not just his companion. "You have instincts that I lost long ago," he said one night, after Olivia correctly identified that an investor was bluffing during a negotiation. "You see people as they really are." "Maybe because I come from where they don't expect someone important to come from," replied Olivia. "They lower their guard with me." Ethan smiled with genuine pride. "My secret weapon." But the peace wouldn't last. Anthony Reynolds had been silent for too long, and Ethan knew that men like him didn't give up easily. The response came in a way neither of them expected. On a Tuesday morning, Olivia was reviewing contracts when John, the driver, appeared at the office door with a grave face. "Ms. Olivia, you have a visitor. Says she's your mother." Olivia felt the world stop. For a moment she thought she had misheard. My mother?" "Yes, ma'am. She's in the building lobby." With trembling hands, Olivia went down to meet a woman in her 50s, poorly maintained, grey hair, cheap but clean clothes. She had the same dark eyes as Olivia, but there was a hardness in them that hadn't existed when she left 20 years earlier. "My daughter," said the woman, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How you've grown." Olivia was paralyzed. All the unsent letters, all the tears shed, all the years of abandonment collapsed on her like an avalanche. "Mom? Can I come in? We need to talk." Olivia took her to a nearby cafe, not trusting her own reactions to receive her in Ethan's apartment. For 2 hours her mother, who now called herself Rose, told a rehearsed story about how she had tried to return several times, how she thought about Olivia every day, how she had finally managed to stabilize and wanted to make up for lost time. "I heard you've done well for yourself," said Rose, her eyes running over Olivia's expensive clothes. "Living with a rich man I saw in the magazines." And there it was, the real reason for the visit. Olivia felt a mixture of pain and anger that left her nauseated. "How much do you want?" Rose feigned offense. "How can you think that of your own mother?" "Because I know you." Olivia stood up. "You never came back out of love. You came back because you discovered I have access to money now." "Olivia, please." "No." Olivia's voice was firmer than she expected. "You abandoned me when I was 12 years old. 12 years old, Mom, left a child to take care of an alcoholic, violent father. You don't have the right to come back now and pretend you care." Rose changed tactics, the fake tears giving way to a calculating expression. "You don't want me to tell the press what our life was really like, do you? How your father beat you? How you grew up in the gutter?" Olivia laughed, but it was a sound without humor. "Threats, seriously? You think Ethan doesn't know where I come from?" "Maybe he knows, but what about his partners, the investors?" Rose leaned forward. $50,000. That's all I need to disappear again." Olivia studied the face of the woman who had given birth to her. There was no love there, no real remorse, only greed and opportunism. "You know what hurts me the most? It's not the fact that you left. It's the fact that you haven't changed at all. You're still the same selfish person who abandoned a child." She left the cafe without looking back, but she knew the problem was far from over. Rose wouldn't give up easily, and now Olivia was certain that someone had sent her mother to her, someone who knew exactly how to use her past against her. When she arrived at the apartment, Ethan already knew everything. There were investigators tracking anyone who approached Olivia, and Rose's sudden appearance had triggered all the alarms. "Anthony Reynolds," said Ethan without preamble. "He found her, probably paid her to come to you." Olivia collapsed on the sofa, emotionally exhausted. "She wants $50,000 to disappear." "And you said no?" "Obviously." Olivia looked at him. "Did you expect another answer?" Ethan knelt before her, holding her hands. I expected you to consult me before making any decision. Why? She's my mother, my problem. No. His voice was firm. We're partners now, remember. Your problems are my problems. Your battles are my battles. Olivia felt tears burn her eyes. She's not really my mother. Mothers don't abandon their children. Mothers don't come back 20 years later asking for money. Ethan pulled her into his arms. I know, love, I know. What are we going to do? We're going to resolve this the way we always resolve our problems, together. Ethan pulled back to look her in the eyes. But I need you to trust me completely. Can you do that? Olivia nodded. Always. Then leave it to me. The next day, Rose received an unexpected visit at her cheap hotel in downtown. It wasn't Ethan who appeared, but Olivia, accompanied by two men who clearly weren't just drivers. I changed my mind, said Olivia, sitting in the worn chair in the room. I'll give you the money. Rose smiled greedily. I knew you'd do the right thing. But first I want you to meet someone. Olivia nodded, and one of the men brought a laptop. On the screen appeared Anthony Reynolds, connected by video conference. Rose, said Anthony with a cold smile. How is our partnership going? Rose's face paled. I don't know what you're talking about. No, Olivia leaned forward. So it wasn't him who found you? It wasn't him who paid your expenses to come to New York? It wasn't him who taught you exactly what to say to blackmail me? Rose looked desperately between the screen and Olivia. Daughter, I can explain. You don't need to. Olivia stood up. Because we've already recorded everything. Your conversations with Anthony, the payments he made to you, even the rehearsals of how to approach me. On the screen, Anthony had gone silent, realizing he had fallen into a trap. So here's my counter-proposal, continued Olivia, her voice gaining a coldness she didn't know she possessed. You're going to go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. You're never going to try to contact me again. And if I find out you're spreading stories about me or about Ethan, you'll discover that I'm no longer that 12-year-old girl you abandoned. You can't threaten me. I'm not threatening, I'm promising. Olivia headed for the door. And unlike you, I keep my promises. Before leaving, she turned one last time. Oh, and Mom, thank you. For what? For showing me exactly what kind of woman I don't want to be. That night, Ethan found Olivia on the apartment's terrace looking at the city lights. He embraced her from behind, softly kissing her neck. How do you feel? He asked. Free, replied Olivia, and realized it was true. For the first time in my life, completely free. Proud of you. You handled that better than I would have. Olivia turned in his arms. I learned from the best. Or maybe you were always strong and just needed someone to believe it. They kissed under the stars of New York, two survivors who had found in each other not just love but strength. The war against their enemies was far from over, but Olivia now knew she could face anything at Ethan's side. She had become not just his equal, but his partner in every sense of the word. And that would change everything. The victory over Rose and Anthony Reynolds brought a fundamental change in Olivia and Ethan's relationship. She had proven she could be not just his companion, but his equal in the war against those who tried to destroy them. Ethan began to include her in increasingly important decisions, recognizing in her a strategic intelligence that perfectly complemented his business experience. You're no longer just my woman, he said one night, as they reviewed expansion proposals for the East Coast. You're my partner, my equal in everything. Olivia felt a deep satisfaction in this recognition. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just a survivor fighting against circumstances. She was an active player, shaping her own destiny. But this new position also brought responsibilities and dangers that she was still learning to navigate. The first real test came through Mark Andrews, the businessman who had shown interest in Olivia during that dinner months ago. He approached Ethan with a partnership proposal for a real estate project in Boston, but his true intentions soon became clear. Your assistant has become very influential, Mark commented during a meeting, his eyes fixed on Olivia while she presented financial analyses. Impressive how some people manage to climb socially so quickly. The comment was clearly directed at Olivia, loaded with malicious insinuations. Ethan stiffened in his chair, but before he could respond, Olivia took the floor. "Mr. Andrews," she said with a cold smile that Ethan recognized as dangerous, "should I understand that you're questioning my professional competence or my personal integrity?" Mark hesitated, realizing he had underestimated the woman before him. Because if it's competence, I can show you my reports and analyses. All the numbers I presented are verifiable and accurate." Olivia stood up, dominating the room with a presence that didn't exist when Mark had met her. "If it's integrity, I suggest you analyze your own methods before questioning others." "Olivia is right," said Ethan, his voice dangerously calm. "Perhaps we should verify how you climbed in your own business. I'm sure it would be an enlightening reading." Mark paled. Men like Ethan didn't make empty threats, and everyone in the room knew it. "I didn't mean to offend—" "Of course you did," interrupted Olivia, "but you failed, and now you're afraid of the consequences." The meeting ended with Mark withdrawing his proposal and leaving visibly shaken. When they were alone, Ethan looked at Olivia with a mixture of pride and admiration. "Where did you learn to do that?" "From you," she answered simply, "watching how you deal with men who try to diminish you." "And how does it feel, having that power?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "Scary, but liberating. For the first time I can defend myself. Not just defend yourself, you can attack when necessary." It was a lesson Olivia would learn well in the weeks that followed. As her influence in Ethan's business grew, so did the list of enemies. There were those who saw her as an opportunist, others who considered her Ethan's weakness, and some who simply couldn't accept that a woman of humble origin had gained so much power. The most direct attack came through the press. A venomous article was published in a gossip magazine, full of insinuations about Olivia's past and speculations about how she had seduced Ethan. There were photos of her entering and leaving exclusive locations, always with malicious captions that painted their relationship as purely transactional. "They're trying to destroy your reputation to weaken mine," explained Ethan, studying the article with barely contained anger. "And what do we do?" "Nothing." Olivia looked at him in surprise. "Nothing?" Responding would give credibility to the accusations. Besides, Ethan smiled with a malice she knew well. "I have something better in mind." A week later, Olivia understood Ethan's plan. They were photographed leaving a meeting with the largest Japanese investors in North America, where Olivia had presented a revolutionary port logistics project that had impressed everyone present. The photos showed not a woman being supported by a rich man, but a competent businesswoman being respected by her peers. "Narratives are everything," explained Ethan. "They tried to tell a story about you. Now we're telling the true one. But not all battles could be won with strategy and public relations. One morning, Olivia received a call that would change everything. It was from a hospital in Boston. Ethan had suffered a car accident on his way to a meeting and was in serious condition. The flight to Boston was the longest of Olivia's life. She spent the 2 hours imagining the worst, remembering how she had lost her father, how Ethan had lost his family. The possibility of losing him now, when they had finally found a balance, was unbearable. At the hospital, she discovered that the accident hadn't been accidental. Ethan's car had been sabotaged, the brakes cut with surgical precision. He was alive, but with serious injuries that would keep him hospitalized for weeks. "It was Anthony," said Ethan with difficulty, his voice weak but loaded with certainty. "He escalated the conflict." Olivia felt something change inside her at that moment. The woman who had tried to resolve everything with diplomacy died, replaced by something colder, more calculating. If Anthony wanted war, he would have it. "Rest," she said, kissing Ethan's forehead. "I'll take care of everything." "Olivia, don't do anything reckless. Trust me." In the 48 hours that followed, Olivia orchestrated a campaign that would have impressed Ethan himself. Using the contacts she had cultivated, the information she had collected and the resources at her disposal, she systematically destroyed Anthony Reynolds. First, she leaked to the press information about Anthony's offshore accounts, money he had hidden from the IRS for years. Then she revealed recordings of conversations where he admitted to having bribed judges and politicians. Finally, she presented evidence linking him to a money laundering network that involved half the state government. In less than 72 hours, Anthony Reynolds went from respected attorney to fugitive from justice. His assets were frozen, his associates abandoned him, and he himself had to leave the country to avoid prison. When Ethan learned about everything, still in his hospital bed, he looked at Olivia with a mixture of shock and admiration. "What did you do?" "What had to be done?" Olivia sat beside the bed, taking his hand. "He tried to kill us. I couldn't let that pass. You orchestrated the complete destruction of a man in 3 days. I learned from the best." Ethan studied her for a long moment. "You've changed." "I needed to change. The world isn't kind to kind people, Ethan. You taught me that." "Do you regret it?" Olivia considered the question honestly. "No. I regret having taken so long to understand that kindness is a weakness I can't afford to have." Ethan pulled her closer, despite the pain of his injuries. "My queen of darkness." "Our private war," corrected Olivia. When Ethan was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later, they returned to New York as a transformed couple. They were no longer just lovers or business partners. They were allies in the truest sense of the word, united not just by love, but by the understanding that together they were stronger than any enemy. Olivia had completed her transformation. The fragile girl who cleaned apartments had become a woman capable of destroying empires. And at Ethan's side, she was ready to conquer anything they desired. But their greatest victories were still to come. Ethan and Olivia's triumphant return to New York marked the beginning of a new era in their lives. The destruction of Anthony Reynolds had sent a clear message to all their enemies. The couple was no longer just individually powerful, but lethal when working together. New York's elite, who had previously whispered maliciously about Olivia, now treated her with fearful respect. Olivia discovered that she liked this new status. She walked through the most exclusive social circles no longer as Ethan's companion, but as a force in her own right. Experienced executives sought her opinion, politicians sought her favor, and other powerful women received her as an equal. "You've become more feared than I am," joked Ethan one night, watching her interact naturally at a cocktail party with European ambassadors. "Impossible," replied Olivia with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're still the king of this jungle. I've just learned to be your queen." But there was a price to pay for this transformation. Olivia sometimes looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes had developed the same calculating coldness she saw in Ethan's. Her smiles were weapons, her words were strategies. There were moments when she missed the simplicity of her previous life, but these moments were rare and quickly suppressed. Ethan, in turn, was more in love than ever. Seeing Olivia flourish in power and influence awakened in him an even more intense possessiveness. She was no longer just his woman. She was his creation, his masterpiece, living proof that he could transform coal into diamond. "Sometimes I'm afraid of you," he confessed one night, after Olivia had destroyed a business rival with a particularly cruel strategy. "Afraid?" Olivia raised an eyebrow. "The great Ethan Morgan afraid? Afraid that you'll become better than me at this? Afraid that you won't need me anymore?" Olivia laughed, but there was a sinister note in the sound. "Ethan, darling, you created me. Even if I became more powerful than you, I would still be your work. That should make you proud, not scared." It was true, but Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he had awakened something in Olivia that he might not be able to control. Not that he wanted to control her. Her independence was part of what attracted him. But there was a difference between independence and otherness. The final test of the new power dynamic between them came through an unexpected opportunity. An international consortium was looking for American partners for a billion-dollar infrastructure project that would connect all the major ports on the East Coast. It was exactly the kind of deal that could elevate Ethan to the status of global magnate. But there was a complication. The consortium was led by Margaret Thompson, a British businesswoman known for her corporate misandry. She had a habit of favoring companies led by women and had made it clear that she would not do business with men she considered traditional patriarchs. "She'll hate you the second she sees you," said Olivia, after analyzing Margaret's profile. "You represent everything she fights against. Male, rich, powerful, accustomed to being obeyed. So I can't participate in the bid?" "I didn't say that." Olivia smiled with a malice that made Ethan shiver. "I just said that you can't participate as the leader." The suggestion was clear. Olivia should lead the proposal. Officially, it would be she who would make the presentation, negotiate the terms, sign the contracts. Ethan would be presented as a minority partner. For a man who had built an empire based on absolute control, the idea was almost unbearable. "Are you suggesting that I pretend to be your subordinate?" "Don't pretend, be at least officially until we get the contract." Ethan remained silent for a long time, fighting against instincts that had defined his identity for decades. "And if you decide you like being the leader, then you'll have created a monster." Olivia approached him, her eyes shining with an intensity he recognized and feared. "The question is, do you have the courage to risk it?" The preparation for the meeting with Margaret Thompson was meticulous. Olivia studied every aspect of the British woman's business, memorized her biography, analyzed her past strategies. Ethan, in turn, had to learn to step back, to let Olivia shine, to be a supporting actor in his own empire. On the day of the presentation, held at the Four Seasons Hotel, Olivia arrived wearing an impeccable suit that cost more than she earned in a year as a cleaning lady. Her hair was tied in an elegant bun, her makeup was professional but subtle. She looked born for that world. Margaret Thompson was a 60-year-old woman with perfectly cut silver hair and sharp blue eyes like blades. She greeted Olivia with genuine interest and Ethan with icy courtesy. "So, Miss Hayes," said Margaret, using the business name Olivia had adopted, "tell me about your company." For 2 hours, Olivia conducted the presentation with a mastery that impressed even Ethan. She not only dominated the numbers and projections, but managed to establish a personal connection with Margaret, talking about the challenges of being a woman in leadership positions, about the importance of breaking barriers, about vision for the future. "And Mr. Morgan?" Margaret finally addressed Ethan. "What exactly is your role in this partnership?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I am Ms. Hayes's operational partner. She has the strategic vision. I take care of implementation." It wasn't a complete lie, but it was far from the total truth. Margaret, however, seemed satisfied with the answer. "Interesting. I rarely see men with egos mature enough to accept supporting roles." She looked directly at Ethan. "Either you're very evolved or she's very persuasive." "Both," replied Ethan, and for the first time in the meeting, his smile was genuine. Olivia got the contract. $2 billion in investments, distributed over 5 years. It was the biggest deal in the company's history, and officially she was responsible for it. That night, they celebrated in the apartment with French champagne and a bed they hadn't seen for days due to the intense preparation. But in the middle of the celebration, Ethan asked a question that would change everything. "How does it feel being more powerful than me?" Olivia stopped drinking and looked at him carefully. "Is that what you think happened?" "Isn't it? You just closed the biggest contract in our history. Your name is on the front page of the newspapers. You're the new darling of the financial market. I would really believe that I could do any of this without you, that I could become who I've become without everything you taught me. Maybe not at the beginning, but now I still need you. I still want you. I'm still yours." She kissed him softly. "The difference is that now you're also mine." "Explain." "Before you possessed me. Now we possess each other, completely, irreversibly." Olivia smiled. Do you think that makes me less yours or more yours? Ethan pulled her into his arms with a force that almost hurt. More, definitely more. Then stop being afraid of what you created. Stop being afraid of me. Olivia gently bit his lower lip. And start enjoying the fact that we're invincible together. That night, they made love with a desperate intensity, each proving to the other that regardless of who was officially more powerful, they were an indivisible unit. Olivia had become not just Ethan's partner, but his perfect complement. And, as the city of New York shimmered below, two predators found themselves at the top of the food chain, united by a love that had transcended possession to become something much more dangerous: absolute partnership. But their final test was still to come, because in their world, success always attracted new enemies, and happiness always demanded a price. 1 year after the contract with Margaret Thompson, Olivia and Ethan had become the most powerful and feared duo on the American business scene. Their names regularly appeared on lists of the most influential people in the country, and their love story had become legendary in New York's social circles. But with absolute power also came the most dangerous of all threats: complacency. It was Margaret who brought the news that would change everything. During a routine video conference, she casually mentioned that she had received an interesting proposal from a group of Chinese investors to buy a stake in the East Coast project. "Normally I would refuse," said Margaret, "but the offer is substantial, and they seem to have very specific information about our operations." Olivia and Ethan exchanged glances. Specific information could only mean one thing: there was a spy in their ranks. "What kind of information?" asked Olivia, keeping her voice neutral. "Construction schedules, financial details, even private conversations between the three of us. Someone very close to the project is leaking everything." After the call, Olivia and Ethan did what they always did in times of crisis. They methodically analyzed all possibilities. The list of people with access to sensitive information was small: 3 senior executives, 2 trusted assistants, and John, the driver who had become much more than an employee over the years. "It can't be John," said Ethan immediately. "He saved my life twice." "That's exactly why he would be the perfect choice," replied Olivia. "No one would suspect him." The investigation that followed was painful. Olivia discovered that the man they completely trusted had been bought by the Chinese 6 months earlier. Worse still, he wasn't just selling information. He was preparing the ground for something much bigger. "They want to kidnap you," said Olivia, reading the intercepted emails with growing horror. "The plan is to grab you when you're alone, use you as leverage to force my cooperation." Ethan remained silent, processing the betrayal. John wasn't just his employee, he was almost a younger brother, someone he had taken off the streets and transformed into a man of trust. "What do we do?" he asked, and Olivia saw something she hadn't seen in years: real uncertainty in his eyes. "What we always do. We turn the tables." Olivia's plan was brilliant in its cruel simplicity. Instead of confronting John directly, they would use him to feed false information to the Chinese. They would let the kidnapping happen, but on their terms. "It's too risky," protested Ethan. "If something goes wrong—" "Nothing will go wrong." Olivia touched his face with tenderness. "Trust me, as I've always trusted you." On the night scheduled for the kidnapping, Ethan followed his normal routine, leaving the office at 10 at night for the apartment. John was at the wheel, as always, but this time Olivia was hidden in the trunk, armed and connected via radio with a security team she had secretly hired. The attack happened on the FDR drive. 3 cars surrounded the vehicle, forcing John to stop. Armed men emerged, shouting orders, demanding that Ethan get out with his hands up. "It was you who set this up," said Ethan to John, not as a question, but as a statement. John avoided his gaze. "Sorry, boss, they have my family." It was a lie and everyone knew it, but Ethan just nodded. "I understand." What the kidnappers didn't expect was that Olivia had already tracked their base of operations, had already cut off their escape routes, had already alerted the authorities with enough evidence to convict them of economic terrorism. When they arrived at the abandoned warehouse in Brooklyn where they planned to hold Ethan, they found not only the police, but also an FBI squad and Interpol representatives. The entire operation had been monitored from the beginning. Olivia emerged from the shadows like an avenging goddess, her eyes shining with cold satisfaction at seeing the men who tried to destroy her life being arrested one by one. "Surprise," she said to the leader of the group, a Chinese man named Chen who had thought he was dealing with a typical submissive American woman. How did I find out? How did I turn your game? How did I transform you from predators to prey?" Olivia smiled. "Because you made the classic mistake. You underestimated the woman." John was the last to be arrested. When the handcuffs clicked on his wrists, he looked at Ethan with something that could have been regret. "Why?" asked Ethan. "I treated you like family." "Because you never understood that some people don't want to be saved," replied John, "and because $50 million buys a lot of loyalty." After everyone was taken away, Olivia and Ethan were left alone in the empty warehouse. The city of New York stretched around them, its lights blinking like earthly stars. "It's over," said Ethan as if he couldn't believe it. "It's not over, it never ends for people like us." Olivia approached him. "There will always be another enemy, another threat, another test." "And that doesn't scare you?" "It used to scare me, now that it excites me." Olivia smiled, and there was something almost predatory in that expression. "Because I know I can face anything by your side." Ethan pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion renewed by the adrenaline of survival. "My deadly warrior." "Our eternal empire," whispered Olivia back. 6 months later, Olivia and Ethan were married in a private ceremony on a private island in the Caribbean. It wasn't a traditional wedding. It was a coronation of two monarchs officially recognizing their joint reign over an empire built on blood, sweat, and obsessive love. The guest list included presidents, prime ministers, CEOs of the world's largest corporations. But for Olivia, the only person who mattered was the man at her side, who had transformed an orphaned cleaning lady into the most powerful woman in America. "Regrets?" asked Ethan during the honeymoon, as they watched the sunset from their presidential suite. "Just one," replied Olivia. "Which one?" "That it took me so long to realize we're perfect together, exactly because we're equally dangerous." Ethan laughed, a rich and genuine sound that she rarely heard in the early days of their relationship. "For the next life, then." "In the next life, I'll find you sooner, and maybe we'll be even more relentless." They toasted with Dom Perignon, champagne, two predators who had found not only in each other their other half, but their soulmate in the truest and most terrifying sense of the expression. Olivia never returned to the house in Queens, but she kept the deeds as a reminder of where she had started. Sometimes in the quiet mornings, while Ethan still slept, she looked out the penthouse window and remembered the girl who cleaned other people's apartments, dreaming of a better life. She had achieved a better life. She had gained power, wealth, respect, love. But more important than all of that, she had gained a partnership that completed her in ways she never imagined possible. The world could judge them, fear them, envy them. It didn't matter. They had built something rare and precious, a love that had not only survived the worst tests, but had grown stronger with each battle won. And as New York pulsed below, two hearts beat in perfect synchrony, united by bonds that not even death could break. Because some loves transcend conventional morality. Some loves are too big to be contained by social rules. Olivia and Ethan's love was like that. Wild, dangerous, transformative. It was the kind of love that changed the world around it, that bent reality to